This is Chapter 17, PowerPoint presentation. Just a reminder that all images within this PowerPoint are in the public domain. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to give me an email or phone call. Chapter 17 is dealing with manifest destiny, and this time period from 1841 to 1848, kind of just prior to the annexation of Texas, and the idea that the United States is expanding into the areas of California and Texas. This has rippling effects on the issue of slavery as new states are entering into the Union, and the debate continues whether these new states should be slave states or free states. Now, this notion of manifest destiny is defined on page 366 in your textbook, and it has an effect on the presidential campaign in 1844. So, manifest destiny, countless citizens in the 1840s and 1850s were feeling a sense of mission, believed that Almighty God had manifestly destined the American people for a hemispheric career. In other words, that the United States was destined by God to take over this continental United States, no matter who was standing in their way, whether it was the Indians or the Mexican regime that was controlling California and Texas. And so there was a large push to populate the western part of the United States. In 1840, the presidential election brought William Henry Harrison into the executive branch. William Henry Harrison won the election in 1840, sworn in and inaugurated in 1841. But President William Henry Harrison, while giving one of the longest inaugural addresses in a rainstorm, caught pneumonia and died 4 weeks later. So clearly William Henry Harrison was president for the shortest amount of time. William Henry Harrison was famed for his win at Tippecanoe, and during his presidential campaign in 1840, it was William Henry Harrison, the Battle of Tippecanoe, the General of Tippecanoe, and his vice presidential running mate Tyler. So the campaign slogan was Tippecanoe and Tyler too. So when William Henry Harrison dies in 1841, 4 weeks into his office, Tyler then takes over. Vice President Tyler takes over, and so in the tradition of calling John Adams, the second president, tried to call George Washington His Excellency. In keeping with that tradition, they called President Tyler His Accidency, because of the fact that he was president just because of pneumonia and William Henry Harrison's untimely death. So Tyler becomes president 4 months into 1841. I'm sorry, not 4 months, but 4 weeks into William Henry Harrison's presidency, Tyler takes over. So as I said before, on page 366 and 367, the theme of manifest destiny, the theme of 5440 or fight, and also this theme of re-annexation of Texas and the reoccupation of Oregon. These are all things or themes on page 366 and 367. These all kind of focus around the idea that the western part of the United States needs to be populated, and that United States citizens, feeling a sense of mission, believe that God had manifestly destined American people to take over the continent from sea to shining sea. And so this idea that Texas needs to again become part of the United States, California, Oregon, all of the West needs to be populated and taken over. Now, Manifest Destiny and the theme of this is also then reignited right after the Civil War. It's kind of postponed a little bit. This is 1840s. So 1840s, Manifest Destiny is a big theme, the annexation of Texas, and then everything kind of is put on hold during the 1860s because of the Civil War. But then in the 1865, 1870s, Manifest Destiny is reignited with the Transcontinental Railroad and connecting California to the rest of the United States. But that's for a different time. So on page 368 and 369 in your textbook, we're going to be looking at the beginning of an American war with Mexico. And this is kind of a provocation that occurs by President Polk. Polk was eager to buy California from Mexico, and Mexico, of course, was not interested. Remember, this is 1848 or so, right before gold is discovered, 1846, in that time period. Some speculation occurs, did the United States and the military actually realize that gold was in California, and so the idea was to grab California from Mexico before it became public knowledge that gold was there. Mexico, of course, was still upset about, this should say, let me change this. Mexico was still upset about Texas. And so there's an issue here with the Nueces River and the Rio Grande. And so when you look at the two rivers in the southern part of Texas, the Nueces River here and the Rio Grande right here, this area in here, let's color it, this area in here is this disputed territory. And so is the disputed territory belonging to the United States, or is the disputed territory belonging to Mexico? And one way in which you can maybe provoke a conflict is to bring military influence into this disputed area. So if the Mexicans have their army lined up somewhere in this area, but if they claim that the Nueces River is the border, then when the United States brings their troops into this region, it's up for interpretation. Has the United States in fact invaded Mexico, or is the United States defending what they believe as their southern border, the Rio Grande? And so if Mexico truly intends to enforce the Nueces River as their northern boundary, then technically, according to maybe the newspapers in Mexico City, the United States, the big bad United States, has invaded Mexico. However, according to the newspapers in Boston and New York, the United States is defending their sovereign territory, and their sovereign territory extends to the southern border of the Rio Grande. And so it's up to interpretation. If, in fact, Mexico wants to claim the Nueces River, then they have just been invaded, and they are forced then to attack the United States, which is what some people believe Polk wanted. And so, depending on how you interpret this, according to Mexico, the United States started the war by invading the disputed territory. According to the United States, we were defending our territory and viciously attacked by Mexico. Therefore, we were just retaliating against blood being spilt on U.S. soil. So this is a misunderstanding that occurs with Mexico. So this is kind of a convenient misunderstanding, because look at the land that Mexico has, the land that the United States is extremely interested in. So all of this territory here in green is Mexican land, And the United States is interested not so much in this disputed territory between the Nueces and the Rio Grande, but that's conveniently used to provoke a larger conflict, a war in fact, in which if we win, then the United States gets the golden prize of California. And so, not to mention New Mexico and Arizona. Now then, that also has extreme kind of consequences when these new territories of California, New Mexico, Arizona, those three states, are they going to come into the United States eventually as free states or slave states? And how is the South going to react to that? So then we have heroes of the Mexican War. We have General Zachary Taylor. We have others as well. But eventually we have John Slidell offering $25 million for California. So to prevent war, we just offered $25 million for California. But of course the Mexicans declined, and so as Polk is frustrated with this decline, with the Mexicans kind of rebuking the offer, Polk then forces this showdown by kind of insisting that Zachary Taylor go, and it's right here, go cross the Nueces River to provoke the Mexican forces, kind of give them no choice. So according to Polk, we tried to avoid the war by offering them $25 million for Mexico. When they declined the offer, the war was provoked. So just to continue that theme, on page 370, the question is asked, the first full paragraph on the right-hand column of page 370, California was an imperative point on Polk's program, and Mexico would not sell at any price. Delay seemed dangerous because the British lion might snatch the ripening California fruit from the talons of the American eagle. And I like the way this is written, but the ripening California fruit is basically gold. And so this is just prior to the announcement where gold is discovered in 1848. Now remember, gold is discovered in 1848, and thus there's this massive kind of migration to California in 1849 after it becomes public that gold is discovered. So then we have another thing that is important when you look at Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln at the time is a congressman from Illinois. He's in the House of Representatives, and so this is a very, very young Abraham Lincoln, a gangling, rough-feathered Whig congressman from Illinois. And he asks a very simple question. He asks the question, where exactly was American blood shed? Because, of course, all of the newspapers are just proclaiming that American blood was shed. This is unacceptable, and thus war with Mexico was imminent. Abraham Lincoln, in the heat of the battle, in the emotional state of the country, just asks a very simple question. Exactly where was the spot? It's known as the spot resolution, the Spotty Lincoln. Where was the spot on which the American blood had been shed? And the significance of this is, of course, Lincoln sees that Polk may have, in fact, provoked this conflict. But in the heat of the moment when American blood has been shed, most Americans don't really care where the spot was. But Lincoln, because of this tough question, because of this unpopular question, loses his seat in Congress and goes back to Illinois as a defeated congressman, and continues with his kind of fledgling and struggling practice of law as a traveling lawyer in Illinois. So throughout the rest of the chapter, there's on page 371, page 372, there's some information about the war itself, the war against Mexico. some interesting battles that occur. Another thing that's very interesting about this war is that it kind of is a practice ground for many of the heroes of the Civil War. For instance, Robert E. Lee and General Grant, eventually Louis Armistead and others, John Hancock, various members that were kind of basically young soldiers during the Mexican War become leaders and very important generals during the Civil War. So spend some time looking at page 371, 372, 373, some of the battles. And then the very end here, we look at the treaty, the actual treaty to end the war and the terms. And we once again do give Mexico $15 million for California, but we gain Texas, we gain New Mexico, Arizona, and it becomes a very profitable war, especially when spun that the United States did not fight this war to gain property. We fought this war because we were attacked. And of course that's a very controversial opinion. The other person that you might want to look up is General Santa Anna and some of the interesting characteristics that he had, and he will come back into play later on. General Winfield Scott for the United States, Old Fuss and Feathers, Zachary Taylor, and others. So that pretty much concludes this chapter, kind of a short presentation for chapter 17. And just a reminder that all the images within this PowerPoint are in the public domain. And please do not hesitate to give me an email or a call if you have any questions. Thank you.